Hello and welcome to the Centre for Computing History videocast. My name is Dan.
I'm Adrian, and we have a new guest today who you might not have seen before. Introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, hello, I'm Matt, otherwise known as Matt the Mac at the Centre for Computing History. I'm an occasional volunteer, usually at the weekends, and I just love all things Macintosh, and I have done since about 2001.
Excellent. Good to have you on board.
Yeah, and just as a quick note, that doesn't preclude me from wanting to know about all Macs prior to 2001, so I do go back to 1984 or even the Apple II from 1977.
Brilliant, and yet we still let him through the door. What are we doing? Excellent. All right, yes, so we're still, as you can see, we still can't get into the centre for now. Still under lockdown, unfortunately. Things are, alleviating across the country, but when we'll be back is still very much an unknown. So for the meantime, we'll still be recording from our respective homes, which is awesome.
Yeah, so we won't be able to open at all till we've done all necessary risk assessments. Will we be allowed to have the public in if they wear gloves and a mask? Lots of questions to go through, and hopefully we'll work out some answers soon.
Yeah, and PPE for us all. That'll be great. Nice full face shields for the staff.
Social distancing, keep everyone 2 meters apart, staff and public when they're allowed in.
Nice.
So, yeah, lots to sort out.
Yes, we're very much not in a position to make anything concrete yet. It's a shame. But so, what else is happening in the world? The big wide world of games this week, people? What's going on? Anything you want to talk about?
Oh, my goodness me. One of the biggest things for me is Sega's 2 announcements this week. Yeah. So first of all, let's get the daft rumour out of the way. There was the rumour, wasn't there, that Microsoft were going to buy Sega. And therefore, they were going to have an enormous foothold in Japan. Obviously, a rumour made up by people who don't know the history of gaming in Japan, because Sega, apart from the arcades, have pretty much struggled in the home. I don't really know what market share they would have gained, Microsoft, in Japan. I mean, Dan, you've lived in Japan and probably know better than I would about this, but I would imagine it wouldn't be an awful lot.
It wouldn't make... This thing strikes me as so weird. Like, we were talking on the museum chat group about how... Microsoft being a non-Japanese company isn't going to do well in Japan because that's just how it works over there. So the thought of calling it the Sega Xbox will have literally zero effect on it. It's nuts. I don't get where that thing came from.
So the announcements that were finally came out were a tad underwhelming, can we say?
Heartbreaking.
So I think they've decided to release 4 tiny consoles, Game Gear consoles, and each one has only got 4 games built in. And as far as I can see, the only one that I would want personally is the one with Gunstar Heroes in it. But then I'm not sure I'd want one with a screen that tiny. I mean, I think it's even smaller than the Game Boy Micro screen. It's absolutely ridiculous. So if you wanted to collect all 4 of these consoles, they're equivalent of $50 each. Just, I'm not understanding quite who they're aimed at, because it didn't do well. I think they're only being released in Japan as well, aren't they?
Yep.
And the fantastic thing about that is the Game Gear utterly bombed in Japan. It was did incredibly well in Europe. Something like there was 11 million sold, and I think 9 or 10 of that was in Europe. It was a very, very high proportion.
All right.
So you'd think they'd release them here. It's a very, very strange decision. And then the other announcement they made, I didn't understand at all.
It sounds like fancy cloud-based arcade games.
So you go to your arcade and do what? Because it seemed to be tied to the arcade. I didn't really get it at all.
Sorry, the idea was that you could sit at home and you can access the arcade remotely.
Oh!
And that streams the game to you.
Okay, when we've all got consoles.
I know, it still doesn't sound like a great idea, does it?
And let's not kid ourselves that the arcades in Japan even exist anymore. If you like pachinko, your quid's in. If you like gambling, if you like they call them like medal games, medallion games, awesome. But the 3 actual arcade machines that are in any Japanese arcade right now, why bother? It does seem very weird. And do we know why they made these big announcements? What happened this year? What's this year an anniversary of?
It's their 60th anniversary, I believe, isn't it?
For their 60th anniversary, they gave us a nebulous gaming platform that has no relevance and unusable handhelds.
Yeah.
Yay.
Also, is that the 60th anniversary of the Sega that made the pinball machines for the American Army?
Good point.
Which is where the service games comes in,
Yeah.
Sega, isn't it?
I reckon it must be.
Well, it'd be about 1950 then, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So it can't be then.
Is it 1950?
Yeah, that might be right. So maybe it's when they established a foothold in Japan proper, maybe? When they set up the Japanese offices? Because they were in, like, Hawaii
I'm
originally,
trying to work
weren't
out even what anniversary it was, whether it was Sega Enterprises
Yeah.
being formed out of that company or what. I'm not entirely sure.
But yeah.
Whatever the case, in the article I was reading, it said that they call it fog computing,
Yeah.
I think. And they were saying, with Sega's arcade games being what they are, it's a lot of Twitch play, isn't it? You need a very fast and stable internet connection to avoid the lag in a beat 'em up or a shooter that Sega specialise in. And that is not the kind of infrastructure that we have in Europe or in the West. So it's something that could really only exist in Japan, if at all.
It's pretty true. I mean, their network over there is rock solid. It's very, very fast indeed. So they might be able to pull it off. But I generally, I don't know who this is for. Tap into the bored housewife market so she can play some pachinko or like some sort of Derby Stallion 2020. I don't know, whatever. It just seems really weird.
Of all the things they could have announced,
Literally, of all the things they could have announced. Brilliant.
We'll send you a golden statue of Sonic if you can prove you've bought 60 Sega games or something like that. It would have marked it a little bit better, wouldn't it? I'm just
don't get it.
Really, really puzzled.
Or like, why not have just one Game Gear that's Game Gear sized with the entire Game Gear back catalogue on it and then charge 50 quid for it? Because honestly, it's like this, isn't it? It's a 1.4 inch screen.
Or smaller, I think isn't it like 2-inch? Because what's the
tiny.
Game Boy Micro?
Absolutely tiny.
Yeah, it's like sub palm size. So you like this. I
think the Micro is 1.5 inch or something, isn't it? It's or 2 inch. It's small.
But the Micro is awesome. We'll allow the Micro.
But I think also with the design of this little Game Gear, they've managed to take what was not the best looking console in the first place anyway.
True.
And somehow made it look really cheap and nasty. It's like something you would get out of an arcade machine, an arcade grabber or something. It looks like a cheap arcade prize. It does. $50. What? Wow.
It does look like, back in the day, like Sega released a bunch of LCD games with Happy Meals.
Yes.
It looks like those.
Oh, yes. That's what I'm thinking of.
It's comparable. It's really bad. It's a shame. Because if they did announce a Game Gear Classic or Game Gear Mini, it's like obviously you'd buy it, right? I know I would. Day one. Money's down.
Yeah.
Oh, I got some news.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that there was a remaster of Command & Conquer. And I was like, brilliant.
Right.
I like Command & Conquer. I played that when I was little. I played it on the PlayStation. Don't hate me. And I thought, oh, God, I'll have a go at that because I remember that being quite good. So I go online, I type in Command & Conquer Remastered. And it's like, buy it now. I'm like, brilliant, I'll buy that now. I'll have that. I'll pay money for that. Do you want to buy it on Steam or do you want to buy it on EA Origin something? Neither. I just want the game, the game on my machine, and then I can play it. That's not an option. Which is a slamming indictment again on PC gaming. Why does this exist? Why can't I just buy a game and then put it on my hard drive and then play the game from my hard drive?
I suppose the main reason is to enable it to be updated whenever you update the OS on your system, perhaps?
I had a couple of big problems that stopped me being a PC gamer years ago. The first one was I bought Half-Life 2 after loving the first Half-Life, and I installed it, and it came up with, you've got to join this thing called Steam. And I was like, first of all, what is Steam? And I had to go and look it up. And it was Valve's online store, effectively, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And go on there and buy all kinds of PC games. I was like, I don't want to join this thing. So what I ended up doing in the end was I returned the game untouched, had a big argument with Game about it because, well, you've split the seal and all the rest of it. Yeah, but I haven't used the code. Well, we don't know you haven't used the code. Don't care. But anyway, they took it back. And then I just waited. And eventually, I think I walked in Woolworths in Kings Lynn and found Half-Life 2 on the original Xbox. And even though it's a massive graphical inferiority, it was good enough to play. And after that, I basically stopped buying PC games because I got fed up with upgrading the PC for a start. Got people who are perfectly happy to pay hundreds of pounds for a new graphics card so they get another 4 frames a second. I'm not one of those people. I think things look perfectly good enough on my TV, so I've stuck with consoles. Every now and then I catch up with the PC generation. I'll hang on to a laptop or something for six to 8 years. I think actually my previous computer was 14 years old when I got rid of it. And every now and then I catch up with the PC generation. I've got a PC good enough to play the latest things. Then when it becomes out of date, it goes back to being a browsing machine. So I don't know about you two, but now PC gaming now leaves me cold for that very reason. I do not want to join a subscription service for that kind of thing. And I know what people will be thinking of watching this. Well, you join Xbox Live and PlayStation Network. No, I don't. So there we go. Don't know what your thoughts are, but
well, I'm not a member of any subscription service either. I don't like the idea of having to install a gaming client, just to be able to play your old favourite games, because, you know, it's yet another bit of overhead that your computer has to contend with, and something that can chunk along in the background and take up processing cycles, and just the simplicity of how PC gaming used to be. The last time I ever found it to be good, I suppose, was actually Blizzard. They made an update to Diablo 2 after about 17 years. And instead of charging you for it, all you needed was your original copy of Diablo 2, obviously with the key that came with it. Nice. And that's all you'd need. And you could then download for free their update to work on the modern operating systems. I think that's the only time they've done that, because for every other revitalization, if that's a word, of their old games like StarCraft Remastered and so on, you now have to pay. Not a huge amount, but you still have to pay for something you've already paid for just to be able to play it on modern machinery. And that's a bit of a shame. But I guess the next closest equivalent would be goodoldgames.com, where you don't need to install a client in order to play a lot of their games. And also you can filter them whether they are, if you just want to play DRM-free titles.
Yeah, massive fan of GOG. I've got a fair few GOG games. So hard to ever play them, because again, I don't play on my PC very much, but yeah, I've got a decent GOG library. Big fan. And yeah, the idea of it being DRM-free, it will work on your machine. These ancient games, they've had all the DOSBox configurations written for you, so you can just double-click, bang, away. Now, this might sound hypocritical, but I have got the GOG Galaxy front-end thing on my PC right now, but yeah, it's not mandatory. You could just go on their website, and you can click, you can download through the app, through GOG Galaxy, or you can get the website and just say, no, just dump it straight down, an executable onto my hard drive and install it from there. So, you have the option. It's pretty good.
I guess, is there any point mentioning, this is a bit of a grey area, abandonware sites, where you can still get copies of the old games that have been uploaded because they're out of copyright, and, it's a way to keep them alive on modern machinery that can emulate older operating systems.
Well, up until like a couple of months ago, the Blade Runner game was like abandonware. Westwood's Blade Runner point and click was technically abandonware. They'd given up on it, and then they announced this amazing re-release, so now it isn't anymore. So now if you are downloading Blade Runner, that is illegal. But yeah, abandonware is, again, some things that are so niche, so obscure. Like, I found a bunch of games from my childhood, which I vaguely remember, like, glimpses of. We had on, like, a 3.5-inch floppy disk. And abandonware had it. It was amazing.
I think it gets such a minefield trying to find out who owns some of these old games as well.
Right.
Because a publisher will buy out another publisher, or they'll just buy out the developer, and then the developer gets bought by someone else or sunk without trace. I mean, and trying to find out who actually owns some of this stuff is near impossible sometimes. We're trying to go through all video preservation, and if we want to try and host anything at the museum that's a download only game and just store it on a hard drive somewhere, it's a real minefield to find out who owns it and then have permission to have that game.
On a vague side note, one of the great things about being a volunteer at the Centre for Computing History is that quite often you'll get people come through the door who design these games or who are part of these games, and they just mention it in passing, like, even though they are here at a centre that kind of extols their works, they still don't think of themselves as being anything significant. You know, these are people who have influenced and, you know, touched the lives of thousands of people all across the globe. Even just a few months ago, there was a guy who came in, Mark Jones, I think, and he worked on loading screens for Spectrum C64 and Amstrad and ST and Amiga from 1985 up to about 2001. So obviously that goes past the 8-bit and 16-bit era, but he taught himself, I think, starting with Plotter on the Spectrum, and he taught himself how to use graphics. But he was just walking around the museum like he was no big thing. And it's brilliant to get these stories, you know, to encourage these people to tell you their tales, because they've got great stuff to tell. And not only that, but they know other people in the industry, and so it goes on. I guess all I'm trying to say is that it's more than just what you see in the museum. It's also everything that's around you. The culture is all around you, and it's alive.
I think the big problem for a lot of developers is that an awful lot of time they've got stories of how they weren't treated that well in the industry. Like, especially some of the 8-bit coders,
For real.
They'd send their game off to a publisher. There's one publisher we could mention, but we're not going to, who treated its bedroom coders as they were then pretty badly. And they would be phoning up months later going, where's my royalties? Oh, well, we haven't sold that very many of their games. And they'd look in the gaming magazine and their games at like number 4 or number 2 in the Gallup charts. And then they'd be going back to players saying, hang on a minute, you told me that didn't sell.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, there's been a glitch here or something. And, you know, a lot of them are quite jaded with the industry, especially the 80s coders. Because unless they were a big company like Ocean that Mark Jones was at, that it could be pretty bad to be an independent back then.
But yeah, it's weird. It's weird. We've talked. I mean, yeah, I've met people in the centre, and they are baffled. Like, the people just come in. Like, one guy. Oh yeah, I did. Cover. Were you there, Adrian? We met the guy who did cover art for stuff. He made a lot of cover arts for games. Yeah, and like, he's like a postman now. And like, no one believes him. Well, it's not no one believes, but no one really cares. And he's like, you know, this game and this game and this game, I did the cover art for that. Look, you've got it on your cassette wall over there. I did that art. And we're like, wow. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. It's something I did when I was in my 20s, and now I'm a postman. And it's like, what do you mean? What? You're an integral part of like computer history. And it's weird how, I don't know, like, because it was semi-contemptuous back then. Like, working in games. I don't know if they personally have carried that attitude with them forward into the present. And now they're kind of like, yeah, I design games. And,
you know, they probably had their parents telling them they were wasting their lives.
Right.
Yeah, I think without, like, the echo chamber that you have from the internet and social media, they didn't have any of that. So how did they know just who they were getting through to?
Yeah. Really, really weird. Really sad. And, like, people are just like, yeah, I did that, and I left the industry and did this. And I'm like, oh, my God, that's mad. We're trying to recruit these people.
He probably wouldn't want me to mention who he is, but he worked on one of the biggest or reviewed games on the Spectrum. So it was like 98% in Crash.
Yeah.
I said, oh, you worked on that? Fantastic. I went upstairs and I got a copy of the game and handed it to him. And he goes, he showed it to his kids, who actually thought it was a lot cooler than they remembered after that.
Yeah.
And he's like, I said, can we have a picture of you with it? And he was like, why?
Yeah. They don't get it.
This seminal Spectrum game. And he said, well, yeah, but the guy you really want to talked with was the guy who did the Coda Eye and who did the graphics. You did.
Yeah.
You pushed the spectrum to its limits doing those graphics. And I'm still trying to get him to come back and talk to us now because he doesn't get how important he was.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. 2 years ago, every year at the Centre for Computing History, we have something called Synthesize, which is a weekend all about synthesizers. And in 2017, Jason, the curator, invited a guy over called John Malloy. And he worked he did stuff for Magnetic Scrolls. So, you know the old text adventure games like Fish and Jinxter, Guild of Thieves, The Pawn, and so on. And this guy came over from Los Angeles, and Jason even because this guy, he came over for Synthesize because he was part of a synthesizer band back in the mid-80s called Mainframe. And he came over, and I was so elated to meet the guy because a couple of years ago I donated all my old Amiga software to the centre, and I think maybe the one I held back was Fish because I really loved Fish, this game, and he was one of the writers of the 4 stories. And the chance to get to meet him and also just kind of shoot the breeze with him and talk about there's a picture in the manual of a baby who's one of the 7 deadly Finns, one of the evil characters in the game, and that turned out to be his son. His son is now 30 and is a drummer and has kind of learnt a lot of musical theory from his dad, John Malloy. And the only sad note to the story was that we never knew how much pain John was in because he passed away shortly after because he was suffering from a terminal illness. But he was so brilliant on the day. I never knew how tired he was, how exhausted the trip had made him coming over from Los Angeles to then come and spend the day with us, giving all of his talk and knowledge about synthesizers, which I don't know very much about. But also he spent a lot of time with me talking about his history of, doing computer games with Magnetic Scrolls. And I don't think he thought that anybody remembers these things. And it was just so nice to see, to see him smile and chat, and he was so convivial. And we kind of lost him shortly after, which was a great shame. But again, it's just one of those lovely serendipitous things with a place like the Centre for Computing History that you get these people turn up and that you can chat with them in such a nice way, and they're so human. They're not blown up in their heads or anything like that, and they're happy to chat with you about anything. It's really great for that.
It's pretty good. They never announce they're coming either, which is really annoying. They just turn up. Like, just call us. We'll go chuck you a cup of coffee. Maybe get a recorder out for a few notes or something. No, it's always like...
speaking of which, if anyone's ever interested in becoming a volunteer, are we allowed to ask for that?
Of course.
If anyone's ever interested in becoming a volunteer, I was upstairs in the equipment room where everything is put together and maintained. And I was working on a Mac, like a Power Mac 6100 or something. And Ian Bell just walked past me. And like it was the most ordinary thing ever. Yeah. Ian Bell, co-creator of Elite. And to me, that's a rock star. That's like, not Bon Jovi, but someone better, like Bruce Springsteen walking past you, Again, nobody bats an eyelid. Fantastic.
Snap. Same thing happened with me. I was busy doing eBay stuff. Stu Cambridge just walked straight past. It's like, oh, that's Stu Cambridge. Just walking around. It's so crazy.
I think the most coincidental incident that happened for me at the museum, so I'm upstairs sorting through a load of Auric software.
Oh.
And I pick up this box and I'm like, good God, it's the Hobbit for the Auric. I didn't even know it was done on the Auric. And it's Tansoft and not Melbourne House like the other versions. And I was like, that's really cool. So I wonder how that came about. Guy over my shoulder suddenly comes up to me. He goes, I did the deal for that. He goes, I'm Paul Kaufman, former head of Tansoft. Oh. What are the odds of me talking about that game at that moment? Have the guy who licensed it right behind me, having a walk around with Jason at the time.
God,
and we got his a picture of him holding it, and he told us a few other tales. Like there's a game on called Rat Splat with a bearded gentleman on it, and he said that bearded bloke. He said that's the guy who designed the cover. He said that he did the caricature of me. He said that's me when I had a beard. So there's lovely little stories like that that pop up all the time. But Dan's absolutely right. We've probably had a whole bunch of people walk through the centre, and we've missed some really, really good stories because they've just wandered in, said to their kids or something, oh, yeah, I wrote that game. I mean, there was a guy who I went fairly nuts over a good few years ago now because he said to me, have you got Commando on the Spectrum? So we actually didn't have SD cards at that time. We were loading them in with cassettes.
Eesh.
So I ran upstairs, got the cassette, loaded it in, and he's playing it with his son. And he said, yeah, this is how I did the little characters. And he was telling him how he drew the little characters. And I was still stood there. And I said, did you do that version of Commando? And he's like, yeah. And it was like, oh my God. You know, when were you going to share that little snippet? But typically didn't really want to talk about it. Got too much. Came in, wanted to show his kids. Job done. So, yeah, amazing.
So they either come in and don't announce themselves, or they announce themselves as they're leaving, which happens all the time as well. Like, oh yeah, I wrote Doom. I'm just on my way out now. See you later. It's like, dude, wait, what? That happens way too much. I just brought my kids down to see these games I made in the 80s. You've got them on your timeline. It's like, you melon. Sit down. Tell us about these things. Really weird.
Yes. Guy doing exactly that walked out and he said, it's a shame you haven't got my old game playing. And it's just like, well, who are you? And he was like, oh, it's used to work for Acorn Soft, so I wrote this, and this, and it was just like, we've got them all, mate. I said, have you got like another 10 minutes? No, we've got a train to catch. I said, well, can you take my card? And of course, you don't hear from them again. Either. It's so frustrating. And, you know, they say useful things like, well, my details are in the gift aid, which we're not allowed to touch due to GDPR rules.
Doesn't help.
So we're not allowed to go down the list and then get the game out and go, oh, yeah, that name matches. Let's grab his address. We're not, we're just simply not allowed to do that.
I don't think they understand. Like, generally, if we, because we host events, we host talks at the centre all the time. One of the big plans this year was to do loads of them, but then something got in the way of that. But in theory, we're having lots of new people coming down. And I don't think they realise that the amount of people that would turn up just to hear their stories. Like, they think, I made a game in the 80s, it sold all right. But no, there's so much more to that. Like, and, you know, if the public were asking you questions, triggering your memory, bring in some design docs, it'd be an immense thing. But they just don't see it. They don't see it as an opportunity. They don't see the importance of what they've done. Really weird.
Going back a bit to the jaded authors, I think a lot of the time they don't even keep anything. So we say to them, have you got an early copy of this game, or have you got any design things that you'd have done? Did you draw any of the maps out? Yeah, I did, but I binned it all.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, wow. So...
yeah. I had a load of sealed copies of the company game. I just chucked them away. Like, what? No.
Yeah, I think just one final little story what just makes me smile all the time. A middle-aged couple came in a few months ago, and they were just nossing around in the 80s classroom, which is full of RM Nimbuses, BBC Micros, as well as Raspberry Pis and the BBC Doomsday Machine. But I was talking to the husband for quite a while, and then he wandered off somewhere, and his wife came along, and she just mentioned about how she used to love Repton on the BBC Micro, and she hadn't touched it since 1985. And she said it was her most favourite game ever. And straight away, we were just able to go, oh, okay, Repton. Well, did you know that you can get this on your mobile device, you know? So we just put it straight away on her phone, and she lit up like a Christmas tree, you know? It was so good. And even though it was touch controls, she took to it like a duck to water, you know? And it was just little things like that that just make someone's day. I mean, it made my day. I think she was really happy because that's something she hadn't seen in 35 years.
Yeah. There was another one like that where a lady came in and she said, have you got a game called Zap on the +4? I was like, well, yeah. So we loaded it up, and she said, I'm going to have to phone my sister. My sister really loves this game. And it turned out her sister was autistic. And this was a game that really brought her out of herself. And a little while later came in with this sister and was able to play this game from 1984. And being able to experience that again was really, really good. And I was able to then show them that they could actually go onto Plus 4 World's website and play it, stream it, or play it from the website. So she's still got access to it. If they hadn't have come to the centre, they still wouldn't have a clue.
Was that Fire Ant? I think I was with you at the time.
They wanted Fire Ant, but Zap was the main one.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, didn't she have some really obscure description of it? She didn't know the full name. She was like, it's kind of like walk around, it flashes, and we had to go a lengthy detective process to work out what the exact game was, if I recall.
Yeah. You have to shoot squares.
Yeah, that was it.
And it was packed in with the computer.
Yeah, that narrows it down, thanks.
So I was sort of stood there going, and like Matt said, well, is it Fire Ant? And I looked at that. No, we played that though. We loved that as well. And I thought, well, the only other shoot 'em up in there is Zap. And then loaded it up, and that turns out that's what it was. So yeah, we do have to be detectives sometime as well when people come in and say, oh, I used to play this game, and they describe it, and we're going around all the volunteers. I mean, one of the volunteers came up to me one Saturday and he said, there's a lady, she's got a description of this game. She says, where a guy jumps off something really high and lands in a bathtub.
Fiendish Freddy's Big Top of Fun?
It is. It was, yeah. And then it turns out they played it on a Commodore. So I showed them the Commodore 64 and she said, it doesn't look like that. So then I realised that they were one of the few people in the world that played on the Commodore or bought a Commodore 64 GS. And that was on the packing cartridge.
Wow.
So that's why they played it. So that reunited them with their favourite game. It's really cool to do.
We're really lucky, yeah. And it's always so much fun seeing what, people bring in to donate and the condition that it's in, Seeing my first ever pristine Commodore 64 in the original 1982, packaging that has since been replicated in the C64 Mini and Maxi. But just to see that, and that lady got it out of her attic without a thought, She just thought, oh, yeah, well, I was going to bin this, but I thought maybe you guys could use it. And it was amazing condition.
And that leads us nicely on to, if you do find anything, we are still tentatively accepting donations. So if you want to email, the email link is on the bottom of the screen right now. Email us person, and if you tell us what you have and what you want to do with it, maybe we can arrange for you to drop it off, or we can arrange it to be collected or the like. That'd be really cool.
And I should point out at the moment there probably will be a significant delay in replying due to furloughing of staff, etc.
Yes.
So.
Yes, we're all still furloughed, but there are some members of staff who are still on the clock, so perhaps they can help you. That'd be really cool.
Right. So, yes, I know things are tough for everybody, but we would really love the museum to continue in its present form. We've got an online shop. We've also, I believe, got an eBay shop, which is, I've forgotten the name of. Dan, what is it?
Game Bites for Charity. There's a link on the screen right now.
And, in our actual museum shop, we've got things like T-shirts, books, key rings, whatever.
Posters.
Posters, that's the big thing at the moment, isn't it? We've got these lovely posters
Beautiful.
Of old machines like Pets. Things will look fantastic up on an office wall or something. So anything you can do. We've got a Just Giving page. If you've got a few pounds you could spare us, that would be really great.
So let's move on from global game news to personal game news, and something delightful happened to me a couple of days ago. It finally arrived. Whee!
A much delayed PC Engine Core Graphics Mini.
Brilliant! I never had one of these. Never had a PC Engine growing up, and it's here. It was best part of 2 months after it was supposed to come out. Obviously, global complications slowed it down, and it's brilliant. It's now my second favourite mini console, micro console. Great. Obviously, number one is still a Mega Drive Mini. Oh, unbelievable. But yeah, I never had one of these growing up, and now it's my first experience outside of emulation to play all these amazing games, and it's a mixed bag. There are definitely some bad points about the PC Engine Core Graphics Mini, blah blah blah, but also lots of really really good things. Obviously, good things being the design. It looks beautiful. The pad's full size, so you get a nice good, nice sensation playing it. Is really cool. But the games, there are a lot of shoot 'em ups on this thing. It's 80% shoot 'em ups.
It is known as the home of the shoot 'em up, isn't it?
Rightly so.
And I think they've tried to balance out with the included games, so it's not all shoot 'em ups. But in doing so, they've included a good few that are Japanese only, and you will struggle to play them without Japanese knowledge. I mean, there's some great games on there, Legend of the Valkyrie, but it's in Japanese. It's like an RPG. You will not understand what on earth is going on. It's a lot of, I've played through it on the full-size PC Engine, but with an awful lot of trial and error, and I still don't really entirely know what happened all the way through the game. They've also done some strange things, like they've got the Japanese version on there, and then they've got the American version as like an extra. Well, just put the American version on and then put another game that you can easily understand.
Yeah.
Because there are more platform games on the PC Engine. There's one called Super Peach Boy Theatre that could have gone on there instead of Newtopia or something, which has got an American version on there.
Yeah.
As you might have seen, I am a bit of a PC Engine aficionado, so I probably won't be buying one of these because I have got 6 machines already, plus a whole stack of games over there, all original.
Not Sapphire,
but
though.
It's brilliant for anyone who doesn't know the console, because the PC Engine games and consoles have just risen enormously in price over the last few years. And to get those 50, I think it's 57 games on there or something, 59, something like that. If you were to try and buy all those, you'd be paying thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
And the consoles aren't cheap either. You're looking at, depending which model it is, 170 up to 600 quid for the console. So it's a pretty good bargain, but I do have an issue with some of the gaming choices.
I mean, we've talked about this a bit already, and it's the machine. It's not for us. It hasn't been made for a Western market. The fact that you can only buy it in one place in Europe, that being Amazon, and in the States, I think only maybe GameStop has it as well in the States. This hasn't got a wide release, so it's very much, it's like, we've made this thing. Let's make a cursory one for the foreigners to play with, because there are, like you said, there are a lot of Japanese games on here. There are a lot of inexplicable Japanese games on here, like Snatcher's on here. Wee Snatcher, entirely in Japanese. That's really tough going. If you don't know Japanese, you aren't playing that game. English subs exist. English versions exist of this game. And I'm guessing they're not very big in size. The file sizes are minuscule, right? So I imagine they could have quite easily put an English dub or a sub file in with it.
I mean, Snatcher was a Super CD game, so it's a few hundred K at most still, I would think.
Right.
But I mean, positives that you got on that system, you got Sapphire on there. I know you have enjoyed playing Sapphire, haven't you?
So unreasonably hard. Just unnatural. Why? It's not fun. It's a good looking game though. One of the things that these games look, for an 8/16-bit machine, it looks blooming good.
It's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. One of the most beautiful games, I think, on it is also one of the most simplistic looking ones. Galaga 88, or is it Galaga 90 on the PC Engine?
It's Galaga 88 if you're Japan. It's Galaga 90 if you're American.
Okay, yeah. Just superb. And like, one thing Adrian always has gone on about is just how distinctive the PC Engine is compared to the other 8-bit consoles, and 16-bit as well. And it certainly is that. I think you probably did explain this to me, just what it is that marks it out. You know, there's something incredibly crisp about the graphics and the way everything moves. It's got its own identity. That's a bit of a wispy explanation, I know, but just trying to explain what it is that makes it what it is.
I mean, it's only an 8-bit processor, but I don't know if it was overclocked or they did something to it, but also it's got 2 16-bit graphics processors in it. So effectively 2 graphics code processors that just fly. And it's got an awful lot of resolution modes as well, because there's a game on there called Air Zonk, which is on that mini which is in one of the high-res modes, and it just looks absolutely awesome.
It really does.
It's got a hell of a colour palette as well.
Yeah, it's got a really good version of Street Fighter 2, doesn't it?
Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, yeah. So that came on a card with extra memory. So the card's actually twice as thick as a normal one. So they've got little extra memory bits in it. But yeah, it gives the 16-bit versions a run for its money. It's probably not quite as good. But then again, it runs at 60 hertz, and obviously our power consoles didn't.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's a lot of vertical shooters on there. You've got Blazing Lasers. Oh, I hate that name. It's the American name of Gunhead. It's always Gunhead. People never Blazing Lasers.
Wow.
And I think Soldier Blade's on there as well, which is very similar. But I just mourn the fact that it hasn't got some of the games the more weird and wacky games on it. Like there's a game called Photo Boy, where you're just a little character wandering down along the bottom of the screen, and you've just got to bring a cursor up and take the best photo of something going on screen that you can. It's brilliant.
Awesome.
And it would have added a bit more diversity to it, I think. But I would imagine an awful lot of it's down to licensing.
Of course.
I think there's only one Capcom game on there, and Capcom did an awful lot for NEC. Oh, that's another big point I'll come to. But Daikumiro Devil Village, we know it's Ghouls and Ghosts, is a brilliant version on there. But yeah, it's probably the biggest thing as a huge fan of this series of consoles that does upset me a bit is that NEC's name has been wiped from it. It's just not on there anywhere, it's not on the unit, not on the joypad. It's, so I think a little bit of a nod to its past wouldn't have gone amiss, because it was a pure partnership between NEC and Hudson Soft, and a brilliant partnership that went on for a good many years. And it's just, you look at that and you wouldn't know.
No.
This is a very silly question, but I presume R-Type is on there. And does that count as one game or two games? Because on the PC Engine, it was released on separate hue cards, wasn't it?
It's the Western release.
It was in Japan. The American release, they put the whole game together.
Ah, okay.
They put the American one that's on that mini console is all 6 levels, I think it is, on one card. So, yeah, in Japan, though, it was 2 separate cards. So you had R-Type 1 and R-Type 2. And R-Type 2 was just the second half of the game. You had to put a little code in.
Sneaky.
At the start of R-Type 2, if you wanted to play it, that you got at the end of R-Type 1. So that would have been good if you'd have spent $40 on the game and then suddenly found, oh, crap, I haven't got a code.
Can't play it.
But there we go. Yeah. So what else have you enjoyed on that then, Dan?
I was playing Blazing Lasers. I was playing Gunhead. And I was nearly a member of the One Credit Club on that. I nearly got all the way at the end. I was playing another game called Super Parodia. Which is like a parody vertical shooter. You can be a PC Engine, you can be Bomberman, or I can't remember what the third thing is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's so easy until you get to level 4. And it goes, nah, you've had your fun. And that's it. You just die. And of course, at this point, because you've got power-ups for the previous 3 levels, right, it doesn't give you any more, because you've already powered up. So if you die in stage 4, that's it. The game is over, because there are no more power-ups. It's amazing. It's like, brilliant, thanks. Great. Just absolutely hammers you. What else did we play? So I streamed it quite a bit. I enjoyed Ninja Spirit. Ninja Spirit was a really good game. I enjoyed that a lot. And of course, Bonk, PC Kid, PC Genjin.
Bonk. PC Kid, if you don't mind.
I don't.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun.
I'm just looking up here because obviously you had Parodius, which is also missing off of that. By the way.
It is.
Parodius is obviously a parody of Gradius.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just looking up here. It appears to be. I mean, it's known in America as Fantasy Star Soldier. So I think it's a parody of the Star Soldier series, like Soldier Blade and all that.
Yeah.
So but yeah, it's a great game, and it's another one that I do actually have the CD of over there. That's
Excellent.
I bought back in the day in 95 or something.
Yeah.
But now it goes for mental amounts of money, like most of them do.
I did immensely enjoy Parasol Stars. That was good. Are we playing that again?
Yeah,
it's
Parasol
good.
Stars. Yeah,
That's a fun little
another
game.
expensive one.
Yeah?
Yeah, seriously.
It's got some good reminders of some really great games that kind of sometimes tend to fall out of your brain a bit. You know, like I'm thinking of Sidearms and the sequel to Sidearms. I thought they were really impressive on the PC engine. So good.
Unfortunately, not on that console.
Oh, are they not?
No, they're not. No, so you got Forgotten Worlds and just so many. Gamola Speed is another one that would have been really nice on there. Where you've just got to grow your little snake and circle enemies to make them disappear. Very simple, but would have been really good on there. Tiger Heli, there's another one.
Yes, I backed that one up. That should have been on there. Yeah. It's got Cho Aniki on it though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Great.
But you've got garbage on there like the Kung Fu, and yet Vigilante's missing.
Yeah.
You just think the Kung Fu, it's known in America as China Warrior, and is absolutely terrible. They just made a game with gigantic sprites, but forgot to attach a game to it. So it was a good technical thing. Yeah. And it's quite sought after for real PC Engine collectors because it's volume number 1.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's the first Hudson Soft game.
Yeah, that was cute because they all had like numbers, didn't they? All the games are numbered.
They did, yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah.
I like that.
So a lot of people know them by their number, and like number 36 is Super Peach Boy that's also missing.
Right.
But not to detract from it too much, though, if you would get an awful lot of fun if you bought that console. But it just doesn't have the brand recognition in Europe, obviously, because it was never fully released here.
Yeah.
That it has in Japan, and of course it even bombed in America, which is largely the reason we didn't get it. Because it failed in America, so they bottled it. The guy behind the PC Engine, or the guy at NEC, not Konami,
blimey,
because Konami now own the brand.
Yeah.
He basically said one of his big regrets is that he didn't do a Sega, which was forget America and come straight to Europe, because we were clamoring for that console, absolutely clamoring for it. And then there is a rumor that there was it's one of these myths, it's probably not true, that they showed a load of distributors in the UK the American version of the console and said, look, do you want this console in Europe? If so, come and talk to us. And the feedback that they were actually given was, no, we don't want that one. We want the little one. Cute little one. But unfortunately, NEC seemed to take that as we don't want that console at all. So they stopped talking to anyone who could have distributed that in Europe for them. And that's why we didn't get it.
That's such a shame, isn't it? Because magazines like Ace and CNVG, at the time, were really pushing the PC Engine and made it look fantastic.
Yeah, they were.
You know?
It appeared in CNVG in '88 with the famous shot with a packet of Skips next to it. Skips Crisps, because that's the size it is. And everyone just went wild over it for 2 years. And it was about 2 years later, everyone went, hang on a minute, what happened to that console? And every time it seemed like we were going to get a launch, there was some sort of delay But over there, I have got TurboGrafx, which is the American one's black. The TurboGrafx is the American version, of course. And they did a grey version for Europe, produced quite a lot of them. But then, bottled the launch. It got a small launch in France and I think the Netherlands or somewhere. And then the rest of them just ended up getting sold off to Telegames here in Europe, here in the UK. And it was just appearing on eBay for years afterwards till they ran out of it.
Really?
I bought my TurboGrafx for the grand total of £9.99 off of one of Telegames' second eBay shops called Console Clearance. Good Lord. They now go for mental money. Now they're £300 for TurboGrafx. And I picked one up just in time. Right, so it's been a great pleasure talking to you two guys. That's the end of our vidcast for this time. And we really hope to see you at the museum at some point. So hopefully in the next month or two, we'll have some news on that. But until then, goodbye from me.
And bye from me.
And it's good night from them.
Peace out.